much for joining us. Oh, I'm so excited to see so many people logging in. We'll just give a couple of minutes as everyone gets their links out of their emails and transfers over to this session. But welcome. We've already met. My name is Alex. I am an assistant director of admissions and also our director of the Rensselaer Medal program here. So today I am joined by Marty Daniels, our director of financial aid. We are going to split up this presentation. There were a lot of really good questions in that first session that you just came from. I hope that it was super helpful for you, but I know a lot of you were asking super specific questions about admission and about financial aid. So this is a really great session to be in because we're really going to dig into it. And as I said, Marty is our director of financial aid, so he's the kind of person you want answering those financial aid questions. All right, so let's begin. Like I said, we have 45 minutes together today. We'll talk about admissions and financial aid, and we will answer your questions. Jen, my wonderful colleague Jen, is in the chat, and Stacy as well from the Office of Financial Aid. Both of them will be answering questions in the chat, and they'll also be saving some broader questions for the end. So just like the last place, if you don't see your question show up right away, that does not mean that we don't see it. So please only send it once because they are 2 people and you are close to 100 people sending in questions. Any duplicate questions are just going to make our jobs harder. All right, first up, the biggest question: how do you apply to Rensselaer? Love it. Great question. At Rensselaer, we accept 3 different types of applications, and you can pick whichever one you want. Please only choose one. That will make our lives and your life much easier. All 3 of these applications listed here are considered equal in our review process, both for admission and for financial aid. There is no application listed here that will give you a better chance, quote unquote, of getting in. So this means you should choose the application that you like the best or that is the most convenient for you. If you're applying to all of your schools using the Common App, it's probably best to just use the Common App for us. If your high school uses Naviance to transfer electronic documents, it's probably best that you use the Common application. If you go to a high school that doesn't use Naviance, if you're applying using all different types of applications, maybe check out our Candidate Choice application. If you were offered an opportunity to apply using the Candidate Choice application, but you don't feel like using it, that's okay too. The Candidate Choice application gives you Candidate Choice status, which does technically stay with you because it's attached to your name, regardless of how you apply. Now, when it comes to applying, we have a number of different deadlines, and I want to take some time just to clarify what they all are. So similar to our application types, all deadline types are considered equal here. Our standards for evaluation are consistent across all deadlines. So the benefit of some deadlines really just lies in when you get your decision. Our 4 options are early decision 1, early decision 2, early action, and regular decision. We do have another option, which is specifically for our physician scientist program. That is an early decision deadline, but as you can see on the screen, it is not binding like early decision is. If you're applying to that program, the reason we have that early deadline is because it's a more extensive application process where you have to be reviewed by Rensselaer and then also by Albany Med. So that's why you apply early. Now, speaking of early decision, early action, binding versus non-binding, we offer early action and early decision. Both will allow for you to apply early and know your decision earlier than usual. But early decision is what we call binding. A binding early decision means that should you be admitted to RPI, you must enroll as long as your aid package meets your needs. Early action does not carry the same commitment with it. So you can apply early action, get your decision early, and then ultimately still wait until May 1st to make your decision. That's great for people who are looking to compare financial aid packages, but still want to know pretty early on that they've gotten into college. Early action, you only wait until around January 30th to get your decision, whereas for regular decision, you're applying by January 15th and then getting your decision in March. So it just kind of moves that timeline up a little bit. Early action is a really nice way to kind of get that sense of stability under you, like, okay, I got into college, this is great. but it is totally up to you what you choose. Those deadlines are hard deadlines. That does mean that your application needs to be submitted by those deadlines. Other documents, things like your transcript, your recommendation letters, if those roll in a week later, a couple days later, that's okay. You will be provided with access to a portal system that allows you to see all that we have from you and all that we're waiting for you. Big green check marks for what we have and big red X's for what we don't. And this is a really good time to remind you that we expect you as almost college students, and especially as high level college students, being Rensselaer medalists, we expect you to be on top of your application process. We aren't going to call you and say, hey, we're missing this, we're missing that. We expect you to check your portal and to make sure that we have everything we need to review your application. So stay on top of it, please. So let's talk a little bit about our application review. At RPI, our review process is holistic. This means that we cannot just look at a grade or a test score and then decide if you're in or not. Rather, we have to completely consider multiple things about you as a person and make our evaluation about your future success here at RPI based on all of these things. For some of you, that'll be 4 things. For some of you, it'll be 5, and we'll go through them. The first and most emphasized often in our application process is your transcript. At Rensselaer, we don't focus so much on your GPA because each high school calculates GPA differently. Some weight, some don't. Some GPAs are out of 4 or 100 or 12. I'm not kidding. We see it. Some schools weight, some schools don't. Instead of recalculating it, we just focus on understanding your academic profile. So to do this, we take a look at all of the classes you've taken. What choices have you made about your academics? How have you challenged yourself? And we do this because Rensselaer is highly academically rigorous, if you haven't noticed. We need to see that you willingly welcome challenges and that you can be successful in the face of those challenges. This does not mean that you must have taken every AP course offered at your high school, but rather that you've really made conscious decisions about the classes that you've spent your time on. Our job is to know your high school. Like I said during the welcome, we do break up the United States and the world by territory. So we all have a territory that we cover, and we get to know your high school so that ultimately we can evaluate you critically in the context of your specific high school environment. So if your school doesn't offer AP courses, for example, never having taken an AP course is not going to negatively impact you in our review process. Every evaluation that we make of you is based on your specific high school context. At Rensselaer, we do need to see a few things, though. We need to see that you have taken biology, chemistry, and lab-based physics, and we need to see that you've taken 4 years of math, at least up to pre-calculus. We do accept 5s on AP exams for transfer credit, 6s and 7s on the higher level IB exams for transfer credit, and college credits that were not already counted toward your high school diploma requirements. You can see this whole kind of outline of what we accept and what transfers in and how it transfers in on our website. So be sure to check out our website to get into the nitty-gritty. But something important to note is that you don't have to submit your official AP exam scores for admission. We're not looking at your AP exam scores. Again, we're looking at your transcript and how you did in the actual class. AP exam scores, IB exam scores, those come in later if you are admitted, decide to enroll, and want to transfer in credits. So do keep that in mind. If you've taken dual enrollment credits or credits at a local college or university that aren't on your transcript, make sure that you have that transcript sent to us as part of your application process. If you're a student who has taken something like physics, but you've only taken it at a local university and it's not showing up on your high school transcript, we need to see that. Otherwise, we won't know that you've taken physics. The things that you list on your application when you're listing the courses you've taken, those don't always match up with your transcript. So we rely on your transcript to know what you've taken and when you've taken it. And by the way, we do look at your senior year grades, either first quarter for early action and early decision or mid-year for regular decision. So that means, I know senioritis is the last thing we're worried about catching right now, but we do expect you to stay on top of your work during your senior year. The next thing we take into account are your standardized test scores. If you submit them. So because of the negative impacts that the pandemic has had on opportunities to take standardized exams, we have instated a test optional policy and review process for you if you're applying for fall 2021 or spring 2022. Again, like Greg said earlier, at Rensselaer, test optional means that you decide whether or not we look at your scores. Your choice will not be judged, and your choice will not hurt your outcome. We'll talk more about this at multiple points, and we'll remind you of this, but it's really important for you to know. It's ultimately up to you. In general, our middle 50th percentile for the SAT is around a 1330 to a 1500, meaning that the majority of our students who apply and are admitted to RPI fall in that area. We do superscore the SAT. On the ACT, it's a 29 to a 33, and we do not superscore the ACT. That may be important information for you in case you have taken a test and you're wondering whether or not to submit it. I know some of you are coming to this session after finishing up your SAT this morning, so if that's you, just a quick note, I really hope it went well. But if it didn't, don't worry, because we're test optional. Now, the second or third thing we'll look at are your extracurricular and your leadership activities. We're not here to make a moral judgment on what you do. We're here to learn why and how you do the things that you are involved in. Comparing activities is kind of like comparing apples to oranges. So we're not really here to say football is better than National Honor Society is better than tennis, but really rather to dig into why you have chosen your activities and how you are engaging in them. So yes, this means that we can tell if you're just doing an activity to fluff up your resume or because your parents are making you. We are also going to be extremely understanding when it comes to the limitations that coronavirus has presented for extracurricular activities, whether that's because you had to lose a part-time job because of that, whether it's because there aren't volunteer opportunities for you, whether it's because your school isn't participating in fall sports, whatever the case may be, we're not here to hold that stuff against you because that is completely out of your control. So do keep that in mind, and please do not fret about that. We know most people who are applying to Rensselaer are involved students anyway, and we're not going to make a judgment on you based on what 1 year has created for you, especially because it's literally a pandemic out there. So the next thing we evaluate is your recommendation letter. We require only one letter here. You may submit more, but please try to be super thoughtful about it. We don't have a published maximum limit, but I can tell you that over the last 4 years, I've read approximately 5,000 applications to RPI. After about 3 to 4 recommendation letters, they kind of become redundant and not super helpful to you. Sometimes students think, oh, the more recommendations I send in, the more exponentially they will help me. I know we all love math here. I know what an exponential curve looks like, but I can tell you that's not always the case. There are only so many synonyms for the word amazing, and your teachers and your counselors are going to use all of them. So be intentional about who you choose to recommend you, and don't think that more letters is automatically better. And the last thing for most of you that we are going to evaluate as part of this holistic review is your essay. Your essay can carry a lot of pressure with it, but just a little secret, there's no one thing that any admissions counselor specifically wants to read about. So if you're planning to write your essay about something you think we want to hear, that's really the only time that I would say you're on the wrong path. Step back and reassess a little bit. Your essay is your opportunity to share something about yourself that we didn't already learn in other areas of your application. So what is important for us to know? Write about that. Whether you think it's important for us to know about a concussion that you had in sophomore year that wound up impacting your grades, or whether you want to share a funny story about your pet or your friends or your family. We're here to listen and to learn about you in this free-form context. So this is your chance to really use that to your advantage. When it comes to your essay on the candidate's choice application, we call it a personal statement. Do keep in mind that you can just copy and paste your Common App essay into that section. Please don't write a new essay, and please don't write just like a small blurb about yourself. Copy and paste your college essay into that section. It's going to make your life a lot easier and our lives a lot easier as well. So for most of you, that's going to be it. For those of you who are applying to architecture or music, we do require a creative portfolio. And for games and simulation, arts and sciences, and electronic arts, we have the option of submitting a portfolio. And all of the requirements for those portfolios, can be found on our website. So check those out. Any other major, if you're applying to any other major, I should say, please do not submit a creative portfolio. The portfolios we require or have the option for do get evaluated by our faculty. Any other type of portfolio that comes in for any other major, that's just going to come to us, the admissions staff. And we're not always necessarily the best judgment of some types of portfolios. So I recommend sticking to the rules on that one. So that's what I have for you for our holistic review. I'm sure there have been lots of questions, and we'll definitely answer more questions at the end. But for now, I'm going to turn the mic over to Marty so that he can hop in and talk all about financial aid.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're all doing really, really well. Our first slide here really just gives a general profile of what our financial aid environment is like. We do participate in all of the programs that you would expect in terms of having scholarships, need-based grants, and then the federal and state programs, work and loans both. Also, keep in mind that for domestic students at this point, over 95% of our domestic students receive some form of financial assistance. At the minimum level, that would be one of the merit scholarships, which is awarded when you're admitted through the admissions office. So overall, we provide close to $200 million. I think this year we'll probably go over $200 million total aid to our undergraduate students. And then the $142 million you see there for our undergraduates from RPI, that's likely to go over $150 million. So I think the main message is that we have a very healthy financial aid program here at Rensselaer. We understand that affordability is important to families, and we do try to award our best packages as the student is accepted. So if you're a U.S. citizen, permanent resident, please do apply for need-based grants from the institution as well. That would be through filing the FAFSA or the CSS profile, or a combination of both. And we'll get into those details here shortly as well. Before I do go on to the next slide, though, I did want to point out some of the other resources we have available. For example, I know that through the fall, there's typically high school financial aid nights available. We're being asked to present at those and do them in a virtual environment. Also, on our website, we have a series of, I think there's 5 videos that talk in pretty specific detail about how to apply and how to fill out the forms, how to avoid common errors and things like that. So a lot of great resources available around financial aid, and certainly we'll have more information sessions through the winter time and throughout the enrollment cycle for you as well. Scholarships is where we start our awarding process, and of course they're free money and they don't need to be repaid. They're going to be based on the student's academic merit, and our primary example is why you're here today. Congratulations on being selected for the Rensselaer Medal Award. That's fantastic. Many of your peers will receive the Rensselaer Leadership Award. Again, those are just examples of our more common scholarship programs. When you fill out the FAFSA and the profile form, we'll consider you for need-based grants from Rensselaer. And then the FAFSA is also your application for federal grants as well. New York residents in particular, you will also be able to file for the New York State TAP Grant Program starting with the FAFSA. You will link to the New York Higher Education session from the FAFSA itself. And for those of you around the country, California, you have the California Student Aid Commission, you have other great state agencies around the country. Please make sure you're filing for your state grant funds as well. Understand that typically the state grants don't travel with the student in most cases. They're typically intended for a college within your state of residence. But as you're considering your options, I just want to make sure that you're applying for all the aid that would be applicable to your situation. For the Rensselaer Medal, what a fantastic award. $30,000 per year for 4 years of enrollment. If you're in architecture, keep in mind that that does include the 5th year. So 10 semesters of eligibility for architecture students and 8 semesters for all other majors. And again, it's our premier award. And one of the things we'll talk about here shortly are our co-terminal degree programs. The Rensselaer Medal will also be provided to you if you stay at Rensselaer for a co-terminal graduate program. And so a total of 10 or 12 semesters, depending on if you're architecture undergraduate. Just keep in mind that that will stay with you in a positive way as you go about your business here at Rensselaer. I know, of course, this is an admissions session as the lead. And so keep in mind, if you're applying early for admissions, whether it's early decision or early action, you file early for admissions, you file early for financial aid, and then you're going to get early notifications of both outcomes. And that's really what you want to have as you're making your decision. And I know Alex mentioned the early decision environment and making sure the award is proper and works for your family. Certainly, those are steps we can talk about more as the awarding takes place. But we do go through kind of a review process after the early decision awards are initially released. And there is some time before the deposit is required. And so during that time frame is when some of the conversations around affordability take place. The next page here talks about student loans and campus employment opportunities. For loans, there's options available for both the student and the parent to be a borrower. And if the student shows financial need, they would receive interest subsidy while they're in school, where the loan would be interest-free, or a portion of it would be interest-free while they're enrolled. An example of that is that for first-year students, they can borrow a total of $5,500, and up to $3,500 of that can be interest-free during that first year of enrollment. And each year of enrollment, the loan maximum goes up, and therefore the amount eligible for the subsidy goes up a little bit each year as well. And for the loans that are the federal programs, typically the student is going to begin repayment about 6 months after graduation. There's a grace period. Student has to get settled, get up and running in their career, and then the loan repayment obligation begins at that time. For the parent loans and also the alternative loans, those don't have the same type of limited annual maximums that the direct loan for students have. So there are options where a family could basically borrow the whole cost of attendance after the scholarship or need-based grant amount for the student. Certainly we don't recommend that, but in terms of are there dollars available, the answer is typically yes. And then it's a matter of, are those the dollars that you're most interested in having? Sometimes maybe not so much. For campus employment, federal work study is awarded by our office, and the FAFSA is required for that. We have a typical award of $2,000 per year. That works out to be about 10 hours a week, 8 to 10 hours a week at minimum wage. But keep in mind that for work study, if the student doesn't work the hours, they don't receive the funds. And so typically the student's using it for spending money. They can arrange to have it applied towards their bill, but typically at the level that it's earned, it generally is not in sync with paying the bill. So the student receives it and uses it for incidentals. And outside of work study, there are job opportunities for students on or off campus. There's a website through our career center called Handshake that provides access to students to apply for positions and to see what's out there in the local area. And this is, kind of a good time. We talk about the scholarships and grants and the loans and the work. You guys are all very busy students. Keep in mind that not to give up too much of your activity when you're going on to college. I know work study, even at 4 or 5 hours a week, even 6, 7 hours a week, it kind of gives you something to do. It breaks up your day, gives you a little spending money. And if, for example, if high school activity that you had is not available in college, then, working a little bit can help with your time management as well. But of course, you're here to be students first. And so make sure you're taking care of your academics as the primary focus. And speaking of that, we go back to talking a little bit about deadlines and the notification process. As Alex mentioned, admissions kind of runs on deadlines for their different buckets of early decision and early action and regular decision. Generally speaking, the application dates for the FAFSA and CSS profile form line up to the admissions dates as well. And then we do have links available to both forms through our financial aid website that I had mentioned earlier. And depending on how the time goes, maybe at the end of the question and answers, maybe I'll share my screen and look at a couple things on the website if anybody's still around. But if you have a chance to go there, you'll find it under the admissions session and a lot of great information, and then also the links on how to apply. We have a lot of special academic programs. One thing you'll be learning about as you go is the arts program. That's a fantastic way for students to be encouraged to get out and get co-ops or develop a personal learning experience and have kind of a different sense of their academic growth while they're in the college years. And so what we do for financial aid in the arts year is that the student is going to be basically, they'll have their freshman year, fall, spring, and then you'll have your sophomore year, same thing, fall, spring. But then that junior for your, or the summer for your junior year, you're on campus. And then we have aid for the summer. And then the student has a second term on campus within that year. Just it might be fall or it might be spring. And so we simply align the financial aid to the terms when the student is expected to be on campus during the arts year. But one thing we want to make sure we're pointing out is that for all students, there would be 3 or 4 consecutive terms of enrollment, as I kind of just walked through, as a student moves through their sophomore to junior years. And for overall financial planning perspective, it's important for your family to understand that so that you can prepare. And one thing to keep in mind is that I mentioned the loans that have pretty high opportunity for the amount to request. Certainly, that might not be our starting point, but as families kind of bridge between that sophomore and junior year, keep in mind that those loans can help with the financing and smooth that out. We also have a monthly payment plan through the bursar's office to help smooth that transition out. Next, the co-terminal programs. That's a chance for a student to stay for just 1 extra year and have a master's degree. So in 5 years or 6 for architecture, you could leave Rensselaer with 2 degrees. And I mentioned that the Rensselaer Medal carries over and would be awarded to you during that co-terminal year. And that's just really a fantastic option for our students. And if you're thinking about graduate school, a comparison would be to have to apply to a new institution, go through their financial aid process, might not have any scholarships available at all. And so if you're leaning towards graduate programs, Rensselaer is a great place to have a vision to do it all in kind of a one-stop shopping environment. And it also applies to some of our other programs as well. We have medical and law affiliate programs with other colleges. You'll see our physician scientist with Albany Medical is listed there. We have a program with Albany Law as well. And for those programs, the financial aid awarded through our office applies to when you're at Rensselaer. And then once you transfer over to the other school for the graduate program, then that's when you would go to their program too. And keep in mind that if you're interested in law, that the Albany program is a little bit more of a partnership. I don't know the contractual details, of course, but for example, we also have a less formal relationship with Columbia, and so students can seek a nomination to Columbia Law through Rensselaer attendance as well. So really great options there. And then I mentioned staying on campus. We have on-campus accelerated PhD programs and also MBA as well. So something for everyone to choose to participate in here at Rensselaer. And I think for the most part, that takes care of our financial aid information for now. Like I mentioned, our website has great information. Maybe I'll show a couple things a little bit later. We'll see how it goes. But for now, I want to turn it back over to Alex to take us through a few more slides and then to the question and answer.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Marty. All right, so just a couple more things to keep in mind as we move forward and before we open this up to questions. So if you do have questions, now is a great time to start populating them in our chat. That way I can go through and start kind of moderating for myself and Marty. But a couple of things to keep in mind. The average starting salary for Rensselaer grads is sitting right around $74,000 right now, which is pretty awesome. We are ranked super high for return on investment, not just because of this really great above average starting salary, but because of all that we really give our students during the process of their education. The point of a Rensselaer education is to really harness the power of technological growth and change, and to give you the tools to ultimately become a creative problem solver. Rensselaer students are known in their industries when they graduate as the people in the room who don't just have one solution. They're the people who keep trying and keep working at it until they get it right, because that's what they did during their undergraduate career. So do keep that in mind as you are working on your applications and thinking about the value and the cost altogether. When it comes to the investment that you're making at RPI, we have a very, very significant return on that investment. And the last thing, you've seen a slide like this probably in other presentations, and you'll see it again, but we do always like to acknowledge the places where students end up. They go to big organizations, small organizations, startups, people who are, very established, and they work for co-ops, for internships, and for full-time employment. These are some of our top employers, but it is not an exhaustive list. So do go to our Center for Career and Professional Development website to see an exhaustive list broken down by major for where our students are going and being hired for internships and co-ops and future employment. Also, good to note, these are some of our top graduate and professional schools as well. So not every student stays at RPI if they're looking to get a graduate degree. They do go on to other schools, maybe closer to home or further from home. And so these are some of our top grad schools that students are headed to. So that's it for our formal presentation, but we'd love to answer some questions and see what other information we can give you. Now, I don't see any questions right now in the middle pending questions, I should say. But I did want to just pose a question to Marty because this came up in the other session. Some students like to use the term stacking scholarships. Can you talk a little bit about, are students who earn the Rensselaer Medal eligible for other merit awards here, and just really make that clear for our students?
Sure, Alex, I'll give it my best shot. I guess if the question is is it a yes or no answer, the answer would be no. We don't stack scholarships. But I think the fairest way to look at that is that, again, the Rensselaer Medal is our highest award for any single award. We do have need-based programs. We have students that have outside scholarships. We allow those to stack on top of other merit awards. The last thing we look to do would be to reduce any need-based aid. And so typically a student that's receiving outside scholarships, we apply that against any, if we haven't met the student's financial need fully, it goes to meet unmet need first, then it reduces loan, and then it reduces the work obligation. But within the Rensselaer specific programs, no, we really do not have a stacking scholarship environment.
Awesome. Thank you for clarifying that. I know sometimes it's confusing and every school does it different, and we have our own business model. So I always appreciate those questions from students. I think that's really important to know at every school, not just at RPI. Now, another question that kind of came up multiple times in the last session was about how we treat national merit scholarships. Does that look like an outside scholarship for us, or how do we handle that?
It does look like an outside scholarship for us. In that example, it's not a straight stacking. For example, a stacking would be a student might say, hey, I got the medal, but if I would have had the leadership award, I would have gotten another $15,000. So can I have 45,000? Okay, it's not stacking like that. Okay, but national merit is a separate recognition, and it's also, again, not fully a Rensselaer-driven program. So in that example, the student would be able to receive their Rensselaer Medal or their Leadership Award. They'd get a National Merit Scholarship Award on top of that. We do a little bit of a match with the National Award. And so that would apply against financial need when it comes to the federal programs. But typically, typically that combination is not likely to reduce the student's total gift aid from Rensselaer.
Awesome. Thank you. And a question came in from Jason. What percent of need is met at RPI? Do we give a specific percentage?
No, we don't. There's many schools will state that, and that's basically it's up for them to define what financial need means. Okay, So we are probably like the majority of schools still at this point, where we do not have a capacity to say that we're going to meet 100% of need for all of our students. Okay. But at the same time, we have a whole rainbow of students and so many varieties, including financial, that we have a lot of students where we meet need, or if their only award they have is a merit award, we've exceeded their financial need. And so, similar to how it's a holistic approach towards the admission side, it also becomes a very individual process for the financial aid side. And in some situations, where we might not be the best match for the family, or we're not going to be the best match for the family, or we might say, hey, from our view, this looks really great. But your family might say, from our view, it doesn't look so great. And so there's going to be a lot of choice as you go. And I see that Alex kind of posted the link to the net price calculator. That's something you could do, and I would recommend you do for all the colleges that you're looking at, in addition to going through the regular financial aid process. Because, for example, it's supposed to give you an idea of, if you were with us now for the 2021 year, what would your award look like in general? Okay, it's not an awarding tool. It's not a commitment of that's your exact dollars. And when you hear me say that, keep in mind that we try to keep it a little on the conservative side, because I would rather have a conservative net price calculator and then go out with awards that are a little bit stronger, than to be viewed as a school who's having overly healthy net price calculator awards, and then the family doesn't have time to change their mind if they get something less affordable later. And so, again, keep in mind it's just an estimate, but that's a good way to see what you might be eligible for.
Definitely. All right. So this is kind of more of an admissions question, but Dominic asked, if AP scores add up to a semester or two worth of credits, does that mean that you could potentially achieve a co-term degree in 4 years? That's actually a really great point. So when you're transferring in AP scores, remember, we accept fives on the AP exams, and we have a limit to the number of credits that you can transfer in. So you can transfer in up to 20 AP or IB credits. That would be maybe like a semester for a student, or maybe a little over a semester, depending on how many labs you take, worth of credits. Does that accelerate your degree? Ultimately, yes, absolutely. So you could start taking co-term courses, before the end of your 4 years, and then maybe do your co-term in 4 years or in 4.5 years. It does also depend on how many classes you want to take a semester and what's reasonable for you. You can't just come into RPI and be like, I'm going to take 7 classes a semester, because ultimately that's going to add up to more credits, but it's going to be extremely stressful and you probably won't be successful. So we do have limits, of course, on the amount of credits that you can transfer in, and then also how many credits you can take during the year. So that's really good. And then our total amount of credits that you can transfer in, so like college credits, for example, is up to 32. So if you're transferring in dual enrollment credits, that we do kind of up the ante for that, because you've taken those credits at a college or through a college, so you have that designation, and up to 32 for those. Now, this is a good one. Marty, Jason asks, what is the average debt for a student after graduation at RPI?
Sure, that is a good question. And one site that I'll just mention is there's a site called National Center for Education Statistics, and all schools kind of have to report their federal information rolls up to there. And so you can look at those sites to see loan information and average borrowing default rates for different schools, because one of the happy stories about the student loans at Rensselaer is that 97% of our students pay them off without any default or any issue. The national default rate average is closer to 10%, and at some schools it gets up around 20. And so as a financial aid director, it's important to have students who are going to get a degree that will help them repay the loans that they might need to take as they go. If you're looking at only the federal loans in the student's name, our students are pretty typical borrowers and will borrow almost the annual maximum each year. So they'll graduate with about $30,000 to $33,000 of federal debt, just most students. And again, keep in mind that the federal loans are not necessarily based on need. And so the freshman for $5,500, if the parent sometimes might want the student to feel a little bit invested in the experience as well, oftentimes they'll have the student at least borrow that $5,500 to help with the payment. But most students at most colleges borrow up to that 30,000 or so for a 4-year degree. We have just a handful of students that I have some concerns over in terms of kind of borrowing high non-federal loans on top of the basic federal loans. We have some students that are borrowing, $40,000, $50,000 per year, but that's truly an exception. Kind of the comfort zone of if I think of a typical family that might borrow a little bit with a parent loan and then also the student loans, maybe that would be about 50 to 60,000 total for the all 4 years. But again, the vast majority of our students are only borrowing the federal portion in the student's name. The parent loans tend to help supplement that. But look at the loan statistics for the other colleges too. It's all public disclosure information. And sometimes you might find a school that has a little bit higher borrowing, but then that's where you focus on that default rate. I mean, you're going to a school, maybe they only have $15,000 average debt, but 25% of the students can't pay the loans back. That's a different conversation.
Yeah, that's a really good point to bring up. I think sometimes we don't think about that, the default rate so much when we're looking at colleges, right? We're like, oh man, like that's such a high average debt. But if it really does come down to 25% of students not actually being able to pay back those loans, that's a problem. And I think that's kind of something that our return on investment really does show. Our students, some of these places that they're working and that they're living and working in places like Manhattan and in Seattle and San Francisco, and those are not cheap places to live. So not only are they, moving to those places, living there, having good jobs, but also paying back any loans that they had while still, paying a pretty high cost of living. I think that says a lot about our overall kind of value.
Yeah.
Okay, Owen asks, when we use the net price calculator, it listed the medal as 25,000. Can you explain why it wasn't listed as 35,000 or 30,000? Excuse me.
My first answer is that it's because you did it before last Thursday. Because we went into the net price calculator and we've just had to update it and get it set for 21, 22. And so if you were to go back out now, hopefully it would see the 30,000. I'll need to go test it, but I just turned those dials a couple days ago.
Yes, the Rensselaer Medal used to be only worth 25,000, but we increased it. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and the
All right.
price calculator, before they switched the year, it
Mhm.
would have been based on like the 1920 award. And so
Right.
1920 was 25,000, 2021 is 30,000. And so now it should be showing the 30,000 moving forward.
Now we're good to go.
Yep.
All right. So we have only a few minutes left, but I only see one more question. And this is from Charlotte. Is the medal applied to the sticker price or to the net price for your family?
It's the answer is yes to both, because the net price to your family is within the sticker price. Because sticker price generally is say 75,000 just to grab an even number. Okay, and so for financial aid, we add maybe 3,000 to that for books and incidental expenses. So financial aid is based on a little bit higher, but the scholarships primarily are going to apply against your tuition and fee and room and board bill as a concept. And so whether that's against sticker price or the net price, my thought is that the sticker price is where we begin, and then we subtract the scholarship, and then the difference is the net price to your family.
Awesome. Thank you. That is super clarifying. So the next session begins at 2:35, and I don't see any other questions here. It looks like Jen and Stacy did an awesome job in the chat answering a lot of your other questions. So at this point, I think I want to wrap up and say thank you all so much for being here today. Again, we really are so excited to celebrate you and to hopefully give you information that will help you make your decision and hopefully, help you apply to RPI too. Jen just put information about contacting admissions in the chat, and I'll also type, or she can type the financial aid email as well. So if you have any other questions moving forward, again, we are accessible. We're here to answer your questions, so don't hesitate to reach out. And that's all I have. Do you have any final thoughts, Marty?
Nope, just get out and enjoy the beautiful day.
Definitely. Thanks, everyone, and have a great third session.